Trail series enforcers and tarot archetypes? What's all this about? And what exactly is a tarot archetype? Don't worry guys, I'll explain what that is, but first I'd like to welcome you to my new series of character studies, or analyses, or whatever you'd like to call them, that's focused on the lovely ladies and gents from the Trail series. A flavor of tarot, otherwise referred to as the arcana, will be explored in the case of Ouroboros' enforcers, since each of their characters corresponds to their respective arcana. And since this is a deep dive video, there will be spoilers from Sky SC all the way through Ao no Kiseki. And so with that said, let's dive right into the first video of the series, starring Renne, Ouroboros Enforcer 15, the Angel of Slaughter. First, we have to define what a tarot archetype is, and just a heads up before we get into that, I want to point out that I'm not an actual tarot card reader, since I'm beholden to a different religion. I just like analyzing the tarot based off the ideas of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung and his followers' influence. Now, Jung, one of the founding members of analytical psychology, advanced this concept known as the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is the foundation on which all of society's ideas about human narratives is based on. These ideas also span across all cultures. So, for example, practically each one of us has met a motherly figure at some point in our life's journey. This kind of figure repeats itself over and over in the shows and movies we watch, the books we read, and the video games we play. Just think of the archetype as the tropes listed on tvtropes.com, which, by the way, I highly recommend as the perfect time sink. The one and only guarantee of that site is that you'll never be productive ever again. So going back to the tarot archetypes, what connects this concept across all of human civilization is the relationship that remains the same between an individual and any one of the archetypal figures. Like when it comes to the motherly figure, we see this kind of person as caring, loving, and nurturing. Now, let's talk about one final aspect of the tarot archetypes before moving on to the trail stuff. The shadow. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we reject. We keep these aspects of ourselves hidden from the rest of the world. This is contrary to the persona, which is the type of person or face that we want society to see. Anyone who's played the Persona games should understand this Jungian concept. We all have our inner jerk that's hard to accept, but when we don't accept it and reject it instead, it basically becomes another being we hate, and this stunts our personal growth in the end. In what other way is this relevant to the tarot? Well, shadows are the archetypal foundations for monsters, demons, and evil in most narratives. The devil, aka Arcana 15, is considered a shadow archetype, and the shadow invokes a sense of fear and dread that will ultimately shackle a person to their set ways. Since the devil is a shadow archetype, the meaning of the upright and reverse readings of the card is reversed. Contrary to the way most of the other arcana are read, the upright version is seen as the negative aspects of the devil, while the reverse reveals the positive lessons that are derived from this archetype. And great, Alright, we can finally move on to the meat of the video now. So, what is the main message behind the image of the Devil Arcana? Well, this image is about bondage. It's about being tied down by the lesser desires or things that we fear the most. I mean, the devil has been associated with temptations and fears since the story of original sin, the fall of Adam and Eve. The person of the devil archetype feels like they can't move forward towards a better life and is commonly swayed, oftentimes unconsciously, by the inner fears they've locked away. But take a closer look at the chains that bind the two humans. Do you see it? Those chains are loose, symbolizing that this person has the power to break free of what's holding them back. However, it's up to them to decide if they truly want to do so or not. It won't come easily, but success in life rarely does. I'll explain this further once I get to the reverse appearance of the devil archetype. But first, let's examine how other parts of this card's imagery applies to Renne's character as seen in the Sky games. First of all, notice the image used to depict the devil. This satyr creature consists of a half man and half goat, and get this, the goat in many myths was considered an impure and lustful animal. You can see just where exactly Renne's terrible backstory might have drawn inspiration from. The devil figure is also associated with trickery in common culture, or more like especially in the West, due to the story of the original fall of man. Renne naturally fits this mischievous, sly, and even malicious nature well. She plays hide-and-seek with the bracers, forcing them to look long and hard just to find her, and she sets up an entire tea party scenario that throws the entirety of Liberl's capital into high alert. Chapter 3 of SC basically becomes a glorified scavenger hunt, just for the sake of Renne's own amusement. After all those years of abuse, it's not surprising that she wants to have a little fun for herself. The female's grapevine tail symbolizes the simple pleasures in life, the ones that easily intoxicate us like wine. In regards to her relationships, Renne prefers keeping others at an emotional distance. Just take a look at her connections to the other enforcers. They are superficial and easy to maintain. In this sense, these bonds hold no path or room to grow that you would otherwise get from a close friendship or familial bond. Renne's relationships with these enforcers are pleasure just for the sake of pleasure. In other words, she's gaining some easy company without having to put in the effort that you'd have to for your closest friends or family members. It also spares Renne of any potential pain of rejection that naturally comes when you lay bare your real dreams, worries, and goals in life. It's really no wonder that it's difficult for her to trust others after all those years at the cult lodge. Now we'll move on to the smoldering torch and the small inflamed tail on the left. When unchecked, fire is a truly corrosive force, and these flames are a symbol of humanity's capacity for destructiveness. For example, various studies find that warmer weather, aka heat, is prone to making people more aggressive. The flames stoke a person's aggression and makes them selfish and blind to all but their own satisfaction. And how does this translate to Renne's character? Well, Renne begins as a pretty bloodthirsty girl. She gleefully slices through her fake parents once she reveals her true identity in Sky SC, and ruthlessly attacks Estelle in their later encounters throughout the game. She becomes especially enraged when Estelle badmouths Ouroboros, aka Renne's new family, and when Estelle reprimands her for being selfish, even though the Bracer knows nothing about what she's been through. I mean, Renne's ensuing S-craft has a chance of inflicting straight-up death blow, but Renne slowly begins to shift to the reverse reading of the Devil Arcana as the games progress. In Sky the Third, she no longer pulls out her scythe at the first signs of a threat. When she first appears in Phantasma, she just backs away from Estelle instead. All in all, Renne's aggression is entirely understandable, given that she's been horrifically abused and betrayed by powerful people her entire life, prior to Louvet and Joshua putting an end to Paradise. It's no surprise that Renne enjoys demonstrating the newfound power and independence she has over her life, since those are two things she never had during her time as the cult's experiment. You see, the Upright Devil reveals that some type of denial is going on, and this is most notably seen with Renne on two fronts. One of those instances is something we already talked about, when Estelle accuses Ouroboros of being a bad influence. Though her life has become substantially better now that she's no longer a sex slave, when it comes to mental and emotional health, Ouroboros is far from what's good for Renne, and she knows it. I think this is most obvious in Stardoor 15 when we see Renne viewing her actual parents with their new infant son, Colin. She tells herself that he'll be raised well and will eventually grow up into a respectable adult, unlike her. She hopes that he'll find happiness. As for her, she'll continue to lead a life of indifference. In the main story of Sky the Third, she lets slip how comfortable and safe she feels in Estelle's embrace before realizing that it's not just a dream. One of the reasons she becomes so defensive of Ouroboros when Estelle criticizes them is because she knows deep down that they can't actually make her happy. The bond she made in the society, if they can even be called that, can't provide her with familial love. The other enforcers can't offer her support since they are dealing with their own mental traumas and/or are set in his or her own self-destructive ways. And this is especially troubling considering that Renne is still in her formative years. Anyone who has studied child development knows that this is a time where the role of a nurturing family is vital to a child's growth. Estelle's not wrong in her worries over the society being a bad influence on her. I mean, enforcers can't even be recruited without possessing a certain darkness within themselves. And please don't misunderstand, guys. I'm not trying to paint the enforcers as entirely bad or evil people. A majority of them possess a benign trait, or traits of some kind. But this still doesn't override the fact that each one of them has either failed to come to terms with their internalized trauma or has brazenly embraced an evil persona. Even Louvet and Joshua, the very ones responsible for rescuing Renne from Paradise Lodge, are not exempt from this reality. Due to Joshua's broken state of mind and Louvet's own trauma over Hamel, these two were a far cry from the care demonstrated in a sincere family. Think about it for a minute. Louvet willingly allowed Wiseman to experiment on Joshua's psyche for years. Honestly, Renne's prospects became even worse following Joshua and Louvet's departures on their respective missions, since the other enforcers in Sky SC offer little in emotional support. Luciola comes off as cold and doesn't get close to anyone. Walter is focused only on finding the next big brawl. LeBlanc is only interested in pursuing his own idea of beauty, and Campanella is loyal only to the Grand Master. As you can see, no one really gives a damn if the young Renne's needs are met or not. Some do feel quite badly for her, or even pity her, but no one seeks to empathize with her plight. All are content to remain distant instead. At the end of Stardor 15, Renne keeps trying to convince herself that Estelle is wrong, that she is happy, that her life is always fun. But reflecting on what the Bracer said causes Renne to go silent. After Joshua told Estelle about Renne's past as a child survivor of sexual abuse, she treated the young girl with true compassion and empathy the next time they met. The amount of care Estelle demonstrated to Renne was on a completely different level, one that the young enforcer had never experienced before in her entire life. Sky Third's main story serves up the second biggest instance of Renne's current state of denial. After watching everyone say their goodbyes to one another, Renne can't help but wonder how they're able to do so with smiles on their faces. Joshua, who has grown emotionally in his own way, understands what she's getting at. Allowing yourself to get close to others leaves you open to the pain of a certain kind of uncertainty, where you're not sure when, or even if, you'll ever see these people again. But Renne is a big girl. These things can't hurt her, right? Just look at how she didn't shed a tear when Louvet died. Yeah, no. That situation was different. The certainty of his death provided needed closure for her. Estelle tries to explain how they can continue to look forward to the future even with that uncertainty hanging over them, and Joshua finally presents Renne with his and Estelle's intention of making her part of their family. But all of this is too much for her, and she backs away. She screams that she hates them both, though she softly whispers her true feelings right after, that she loves them deep down. That's Renne taking one step away from her denial and one step closer towards her eventual liberation in the Crossbell arc. Let's recall that the devil archetype reversed is all about liberation. Liberation from toxic relationships and/or your self-destructive habits and worst fears. We talked about that fire before, right? Well, fire is also symbolic of rebirth and new life, like when new growth pops up only after a forest fire. The fact that Renne returns to Crossbell, yet doesn't stage any sinister plot, is significant. Remember how malicious she used to be in Sky SC with her tea party plan? She still has a mischievous side, but she's grown a lot. She no longer comes up with plans to toy with people in an effort to hurt them. Well, besides with Yona. Anyway, moving on, Crossbell is a place where a big source of Renne's mental trauma resides, namely her true parents who purposefully abandoned her, which opened up the door to the horrific sexual abuse she endured at the cult lodge. Like many other survivors of this kind of abuse, Renne is led to believe that she was defective right from the day she was born, that she deserved to be defiled, even though this kind of abuse is never, ever the fault of the victim. And so, subconsciously, she believes she doesn't deserve the things that make other people happy in life. Potter Mater is a true MVP for always supporting Renne, but it still can't provide the human connection one has with a real mom and dad. We'll talk about all of Ren's family later, but first we gotta focus on Cullen and Ren. Ren partly confronts her trauma while following Lloyd around on the missing child search, since the kid is her very own blood sibling. Her younger brother, who, unlike her, has grown up in a loving household. She has no obligation to get involved and help, but she does so of her own free will. From there, we get the whole chain of events that eventually leads to Ren finding out the truth behind her parents' intentions all those years ago, and her kidnapping by the cult. Yes, the SSS was a big help in this situation, but it was Ren who ultimately took that first step in getting involved with this search and rescue. Remember how the chains binding the enslaved humans are loose? It's up to the devil archetype to face his or her fears and move past them. Surely it's scary to run away with a literal devil figure looming over you, but the human slaves possess the power to break free and move on. They just need to make their own decision to do so. During the tearjerker moment, once Ren steps out of the closet, she thanks the SSS for helping her find closure to one of the things that brought her to Crossbell. Her parents didn't hate her after all. They thought she was dead. Now that she knows the truth, she can move on to finding some type of closure regarding the DG cult. We find out exactly what kind of info Ren was actively searching for when she shows up at the hospital. Since she's a genius, she already suspected that Joachim Gunter was a DG cult leader and responsible for carrying out their final plans. She just needed the info in those files as confirmation. This certainly plays a huge factor in Ren's intervention during the final boss battle of Zero. Earlier she said she wouldn't get involved, but she said the same thing in regards to the Hayworth family back in Sky the Third. She can no longer deny her true feelings. Just as there's a part of her that wished to save Estelle, Joshua, and the SSS, there's also a part that surely wished to put an end to the cult schemes for good. The last of the cult was dealt with following Joachim's demise, and in the end, we learn just how fearful and ashamed Ren felt about her past. She was so afraid that Estelle and Joshua would no longer want anything to do with her if they knew about Paradise. It's common for victims of sexual abuse to feel ashamed, even though it is not their fault. Rather, it's that of the perpetrators who have done the inexcusable. Fortunately, we know our two bracers well enough by now. Of course they want nothing more than to love and care for Ren, every aspect of her, both from the past and the present. Even Potter Mater determined what Ren actually wanted, to be with the Brights, and so Best Dad Mom Bot drops Ren right in front of them. We see the final culmination of Ren's transformation from the upright to reverse devil archetype in Ao no Kiseki, when the three Brights are called in as reinforcements during the Crossbell crisis. She is now liberated from the internalized shame and fear that used to hold her back. Not only does she actively decide to protect her family by blood, but she now relies on Joshua and Estelle's help as well. This is a far cry from the Ren of the past, who only relied on herself and Potter Mater. We see that Ren is not immune to more heartbreak though, since this battlefield is where Potter Mater makes the ultimate sacrifice to protect her. It's a very tragic but tangible way to conclude Ren's transformation up to this point. The one and only person she used to trust is now gone. But on the other hand, she now has a loving family in the Brights Tita, and all her other friends in Liberal to support her in her grief. Staying true to the devil archetype, Ren's gradual steps towards confronting her internalized fears has ultimately resulted in her liberation and newfound happiness. Thanks so much for watching, guys. It really helped me out if you leave a like if you liked this, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Big thanks to my patrons and the Grand Master of them all, Philip C. Consider becoming one to vote in the polls that decide who will be analyzed next. I'm curious to know what Ren moments are your favorites, so let me know in the comments below. And until next time, take care. See ya!